In the morning, no trouble. In the forest, lights stuttering. The sweet fern uncovered. Well, meanwhile, all hovering. Distance, shadow covers the turnstiles of summer. The horizon, all colors. Where the words hang unuttered. The truth on out in the front yard with your bruises loud. Can't you see it? We're connected. Can't you feel it? The connection. We're spinning the same direction. If the truth is what the veil denies, then lift it like the flesh divides. Can't you see it? We're connected. Can't you feel it? The connection. We're spinning the same direction. We're connected. Can't you feel it? The connection. We're spinning the same direction. Can't you see it? We're connected. Can't you feel it? The connection. We're spinning the same direction.
Chris Bathgate in our studios performing live for you here on Culture Shift, joined by his band Sam Cooper and Graham Parsons. Chris, it's such a pleasure to have you back here at WDET.
All right, it's so great to be here.
We're having you back because you put out a great record last year, The Significance of Peaches. And tonight, if people are enjoying this little taste, they'll be able to see you at the Ferndale Public Library as part of their concert series that they do. That show is free, open to the public. 6:30 is the time that people can go out there and support. And we were talking about this before, that the idea of music and the public library, normally a place that wants you to be quiet, but it's kind of a great thing for musicians to perform there because they've got a little bit of a budget and they're able to draw in a crowd.
And there's a culture of listening and or reading or paying attention. It's amazing. It's wonderful.
Is that something with your music that you've had to fight crowds to get them to be quiet and listen? Because this is pretty intense stuff. You do have to dial in a little bit to be there.
That's true. I try to be lighthearted about it. Sometimes I'll josh a crowd, but I just know that if there's a culture of listening, that I'm just going to perform all that much better because the canvas is waiting for the paint. It's wonderful.
There's already the expectation.
Yes.
We heard some really incredible songs there. The last one, Bruises, which has that anthemic quality. I felt like I was living inside of it there for a moment. Can you talk to me a little bit about Bruises and what we're hearing in that song?
This iteration of it, you're sort of still getting the chords. A lot different than the record, which is really, really lush and well produced. But the song comes from walking around downtown San Francisco. You know, I moved back to Michigan recently from the Bay Area, and just, encountering on a daily basis people not helping each other. And it just made me shake my head. I'm still movable at this age, and am far less jaded than maybe I expect myself to be. And I was just sort of shocked and really thinking, we're all in this together. We're all spinning on the same green earth, and boy, how can I say that in the simplest way and really mean it?
There's this idea, quite literally, of connecting with one another.
Absolutely.
That you put in that song. And I wonder if that's a Midwest shift for you. You've spent so much time here in Michigan with our Midwest nice vibes, sometimes passive-aggressive nice vibes if you're on the west side of the state. No offense. But do you think that was part of the shift, was leaving the Midwest and going out to California?
I wouldn't be surprised. I've bumped into that sort of mentality, the Midwest nice. Yeah, absolutely. Trying to sneak past somebody in a grocery store. Yes, I'm that guy who's trying to be courteous about it. But yeah, I think it was just probably a combination of that, and then faced with people who as much as I could ever struggle in my life, there's always someone who's going to be struggling more, and to encounter that and want to help immediately, wanted to capture that feeling and that moment, maybe to remind myself, but also to share it with others. Like, hey, I still feel this.
Is that the vast majority of Bathgate material? Is that sort of personal insight in your lyrics?
It is. There's lots of stuff about heartbreak. I was a very moody young man. I'm still moody, but in new ways, in different ways, in family ways, in philosophical ways. But it's, I think that's sort of like the moment of inspiration is maybe a thread that's deep and bruises from a real moment in my life. And that's probably what all my songs have in common. There's something from my life. I have to sing what I know.
The more specific you are, the more universal it is, or so they say.
My gosh, that's wonderful. Yes.
Your moodiness has evolved, and clearly your music has evolved too. You mentioned bruises on the record, a different beast. Here in this studio, I'd call it stripped down. I think that's the right term for it. Why change it for you? Is that way of keeping it exciting for you personally?
Absolutely, and working with the resources I have, which are Samantha Cooper and Graham Parsons, who are incredibly talented, and what we can make happen in a room or in a space or in a courtyard, like I wouldn't want to try to recreate something I'd already done when I have these talents at my disposal. What can we do? How can we arrange together to make this interesting for us and like another sort of exercise in music composition? Arranging is very much like composition for me. It's like, what are we going to represent? The choices that we make are important. So I think that's the main reason. With a big enough budget, that song certainly could exist as it was on the record or as it is on the record. But I don't know how interesting that would be to people because they already have it at the tip of their fingers anytime they like.
That is a very interesting discussion that I'm sure you're dealing with, lots of musicians are dealing with, which is how do you connect with an audience? How do you make it exciting for them? If you do have everything at your fingertips, it seems like people aren't so convinced anymore that, yeah, the record was great, I loved it, but I want to go see it live. There's an expectation that there should be something special about that live version, and I would imagine that equates to a decent amount of pressure for a musician to be under.
Absolutely, and but it's also like an exciting challenge. It's like a puzzle. It's a riddle. This is probably a lot of the work that we do as songwriters who produce our own music in studio. You have to make those decisions. It's just the outcome is different, whether it's a live performance where there's a lot of considerations of instrument and there's no fixing it in post, and then what you're up against with a record. So it's a good riddle. It's a good exercise for your musical mind.
In the defense of the live show, and especially seeing live local music, you're here because I went to go see you live at the Loving Touch earlier this year with this iteration of your band, and I can't say enough how it blew me away. It felt like you had stopped time for a moment, which I think is a difficult thing for pop music to do, right? We can lose ourselves in classical music. It's hard to remember, am I 2 minutes in or 5 minutes into this overture? But in pop music, you can often figure out where you are because the bridge means there might be another minute or two before they bring it back to the chorus. But this iteration of the band and the way you do the instrumentation, it feels timeless. It feels like you can lose yourself in it quite a bit. And I think it has to do primarily with this organ, this machine that you are using your feet to power. Talk to me about your setup, because you're not only playing that organ, you are drumming at the same time and singing and making eye contact with your band. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out, because I wouldn't think, you're listening on the radio and you can't see. Well, I'm sitting in front of a Kimball parlor organ, or AKA pump organ. This was made in Chicago, early 1900s. I forget the exact date. I have it somewhere of this specific organ. And it's old and it's creaky and it's foot powered. It's analog in that way. I have two almost like volume pedals on a electronic organ, but it's sort of like little bike pedals at my feet, and I have to move them, sort of like I'm riding a bike, but more like I don't know. It reminds me of people using bellows to like make coal hotter for forging. That's the vibe of what's at my feet. There's two big air chambers, big pillows that are being squished and pushing air through. And ever since I started making the record, I've prioritized this instrument over others. I think it's beautiful. It to me sounds more similar to my voice than any guitar I've ever played. So I have like a kinship with its tonality, even though it is squirrely and out of tune, and we're tuning before this session.
And clearly a pain in the ass to move around.
Well, I have a system. I'm getting better at it. That's the good thing about doing something over and over again. You innovate new ways to make it easier. And then percussion. Samantha's also playing percussion, and for me, it's a great way to cover parts of the larger studio composition. That's also incredibly fun for me to play. My left hand is chording, I'm singing, my feet are pedaling, and my right hand is hitting drums. Every part of my body and mind is busy. And you also point out, I'm not just playing music, I'm also making eye contact with my band members. So there's a higher level of this part's coming up. I want to make sure that we're connected and in sync with each other. So
yeah, this is musicians working together, but also relating to each other like fungi, because I feel like there's some sort of communication happening that I can't see.
Beneath the soil.
But beneath the soil, it certainly is. And it's impressive to watch you navigate multiple instruments plus your voice, because, I'm a person that when I go to tie my shoes, it hurts in the morning, and that's difficult enough for me to coordinate. Let's put this band back to work. Let's get into another track. Tell me about Water, the song that we're about to hear.
This is actually from the album Dizzy Seas. It's the opening track. It's a waltz. It's I think it's a very kind thing to say. Jeff Milo once described this song as beyond genre. So the Dizzy Seas version is very ethereal and thumping. This version is a little more relaxed and oil lampy, and sort of dim and a little brooding. But it's a song about how inefficient language is to describe how you actually feel, and the trouble with trying to communicate the ineffable experience of life in clumsy words that you have to work hard at to use effectively. It's like sort of a constant struggle to be as precise as you can about what you're experiencing. I could use 2 million more words, please, to help describe that. So this is a song about that.
Chris Bathgate with his band, Sam Cooper and Graham Parsons, live on WDET here on Culture Shift.
Sometimes my thoughts are like lights on the water, some calm and clear and the others they stutter, feathered across the feel of the water, and somehow my words they just scatter them further out. Hey, I call it out. Hey, I calm it down. Hey, I call it out. Sometimes my words are like streets long and narrow, faded in heat of the mind's deepest furrow, sorrow and sooth, secret and cadence. Somehow my thoughts remain otherwise sated out. Hey, I call it out. Hey, I calm it down. Hey, I call it out.
Chris Bathgate live in our studios here at WDET. He was joined by Sam Cooper and Graham Parsons. The great record, Significant of Peaches, out now, came out last year. A fantastic listen, still in my heavy rotation today. And Chris and his band are going to be performing tonight at 6:30 at the Ferndale Public Library. This is a free outdoor show. Bring the whole family and see this world-class musician and his band right here in our own backyard. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Ryan.
And thank you so much to Sam Cooper and Graham Parsons, which, again, listen to the go-rounds. Really fantastic Michigan group. And tell them you heard it here on Culture Shift on 101.9 WDET FM, Detroit's NPR station, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thank you to Sam Beaubien, Conor Anderson, Nate Bender, and Tia Graham for helping make this live session happen. Right now, it's time for news from NPR.